want to tell you about my friend Jim. He's a dentist. I noticed at church one Sunday that his eyes were really bloodshot. And I asked him what was going on, what kept him up so late. He's got a lot of kids. I assumed it was them. And he ended up telling me a little bit about a midnight extraction he had to do, where he had to yank somebody's tooth out. It had rotted away. It was a little inconvenient. It was in the winter. He had to go in, open up his office, get it warmed up, get all of his tools set up, and extract this gentleman's tooth. He asked when it started hurting him and why he didn't call him sooner so that he wouldn't have to do this in the middle of the night. And the gentleman began to tell a story of how it just, it was hurting really bad, but then it went away, or then he took some medication and he felt better. And so he didn't end up calling him until it was in the middle of the night, and the pain was so extreme and so sharp, he just had to have his tooth yanked out. Jim was, of course, a little bit frustrated, but he was kind in extracting this gentleman's tooth. But I asked him, when do people get their teeth extracted? And he explained how, they do it when the tooth is so rotted away that they can't really, there's no longer just a little cavity to fill, but the whole tooth has become rotten. And so they've got to pull it out. But he then began to explain to me how it doesn't just happen overnight. This process happens a little at a time. It starts off with a cavity in the tooth, something very small, a little divot, a little hole in the enamel, and then which may cause some sensitivity to sugar or hot or cold, different things like that. But the brain or the body has a wonderful way of accommodating or getting used to pain. And so, it goes away. And then the cavity gets a little bit bigger, and then you get used to it, and it goes away. And then it gets a little bit bigger, and maybe you have to take some pain medication, but in a sense it goes away. And a little at a time, that tooth will rot away. It's not too much different with other ailments that people experience in orthopedics. And Jim began later that day to tell me about some pain that he had in his shoulder. And I said, well, how long has that been bothering you? And he said, well, the last couple of weeks. I said, okay, and you don't remember doing anything that caused it? It wasn't something traumatic? He said, no, it just gradually started bothering me. I'm like, are you sure it didn't bother you a few months ago? And he thought for a moment, and he agreed with me. He said, yes, actually, a couple months ago it was bothering me too. And I said, how about before that? And all of a sudden the light bulb went off, and you can see his face light up a little bit as he realized that the same thing that happens with his patients in their teeth, getting cavities that get worse and worse, had been happening with his shoulder. And he said, I'm going to come in and see you. He wanted to make sure this just remained a small tendonitis problem and didn't turn into something bigger, something like a rotator cuff tear. And this is really true for most orthopedic problems that sneak up on people, whether it's a disc problem or tendonitis in the shoulder or some arthritis in the knee. It doesn't just happen overnight. And it's not just your age. It's often the way you're moving and doing things. Jim came into my office, worked with me 3 or 4 times, learned some great things to do to take care of his shoulders, and hopefully avoided ever having a rotator cuff repair. I'm Benjamin Hill with Mission Physical Therapy.